All right. I'm going to give you a choice of where we move now to... I mean, we're going to do both. But do we move to COVID/Texas or do we move to cancel culture?
I like this choose your own adventure
Yeah.
style.
Ooh,
I think we should move to cancel culture.
Okay, let's do that. All right.
I think we should move to cancel culture.
Okay, so I'll set up. You take it from there.
Okay.
Everyone's favourite books were cancelled. Did you hear? Everyone's favourite books being And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, If I Ran the Zoo, McElligott's Pool, On Beyond Zebra, Scrambled Eggs Super, and The Cat's Quizzer. They've been banned. Well, when I say banned, they're not banned. What I mean is the publisher has chosen not to publish it anymore, like happens with 99.999% of books.
Yes.
If I wrote a book, the publisher would elect to take it from publishing before I even finished.
You've been cancelled before you had a chance.
That's right. But anyway, but those books are no longer being offered because they have pictures in them that have been deemed insensitive. You wouldn't know what those pictures look like if you watch Fox News because they haven't aired them once. They just keep on talking about them. I wonder why they don't show the pictures. But let's leave that aside for a second. John showed the pictures on our show. By the way, before we talk about the cancel culture thing, let's just talk briefly about our view of the actual... let's leave out the outrage. Let's just talk about the issue rationally. And then we'll talk about irrationally.
Is that possible?
No, I think you can.
Okay.
If you are them and you have the Ching Chong Chinaman picture in your book, right? Would you do the same thing or would you do something different?
Well, I think everybody has a line where, a friend of mine growing up had a hand-me-down. He was British, which is where the problem starts.
Yes.
Rupert the teddy bear, the one that wore the plaid pants.
Yes.
He had a book which was called Rupert on N-Word Island.
I see.
Now, I'm presuming that some time ago, Rupert on N-Word Island became unavailable for purchase in a shop.
Probably.
But if I went to the British Library,
yeah,
I could take out a copy.
Yeah.
So there's a line that the problem is I don't think it is possible to talk about these things rationally, right? Because we're really talking about social taboos. Mm. And social taboos are motivated by power.
Yeah. So,
you know, in traditional Hawaiian culture, all sorts of things, not just in traditional Hawaiian culture, that's the example I'm going to use, you know, a non-noble person touching a banana was a fatal offence.
Rich, you can't say that on a podcast.
What?
A non-native P touching a B word. You can't say that. So you pulled off air.
I'm sorry. Let's drive through and say everything that we're going to say because it's, you know, we are going to be cancelled now.
Yeah.
You know, there are millions of people who have died over what letters Jesus' name is spelt with.
Sure.
These kinds of things.
Yeah.
There is no non-trivial, non-emotional way to talk about it. There's only this fight over things which are apparently trivial and apparently non-emotional. And the reason I think that the fight has changed is because one of the reasons is that it is so difficult to produce large-scale reform or change by other means.
Yeah. Well, all I'd say before we move on is that I'm going to move on from the topic, but move on to other parts, is that what I'm referring to is not that we sit around and look at the Chinaman pic and go, oh, you know, is that offensive? Is that not offensive? Whatever. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm saying is there are other solutions other than pulling the book. Like, this is not new. Like you say, This is not new. This has been happening forever.
Yes.
And, 150 years ago, fairy tales were very different to what they were, say, 70 years ago or 80 years ago. And they got they got sanitized. Like you
Absolutely.
look at your Grimm's fairy tales; they're very, very different in the original Grimm than they became, right?
And there's also situations where, Shakespeare, for example, if we go back to the 19th century, does get sanitized. This is where bowdlerization comes from.
Yeah.
The Bowdler edition of Shakespeare takes out all the murder and incest and sexy bits and cleans it all up.
Yeah. So if I'm the Seuss family, and I've got this book which is basically fine, but just with one dodgy picture, I'm just changing the picture. That's what I'm doing.
That may violate some stipulation of the Seuss estate. This all stuff gets very complicated. That may not be possible.
Well, it's the Seuss estate that's making the decision. I'm saying if I'm the Seuss estate, that's what I'd do.
I mean that they may have been given instructions by
I see.
Seuss,
Yeah,
or
sure.
that you can't do stuff like that. For example,
maybe. Look, I don't know, but that was my first impulse when I heard this. I thought, why don't they just do what people have done for generations, which is when something gets out of date, just make a tiny change to modernize it. There are artists. They can make it look like Dr Seuss did it. No one would know the difference. No one would care. No one would even notice unless you pointed it out.
But if you did that and someone did notice, you would be accused of doing Soviet-style airbrushing.
Probably.
So there's no easy win.
I'll throw out one other one as well, which is this is a bit libertarian, but it's if you have a situation where someone elects to not print a book anymore, because and it's like a dead person's book, so it's one of those things where the copyrights lasted forever for whatever reason, like is it like the person's been dead for whatever, you just exhaust copyright. If someone else wants to print it, they can.
Well, they will, but you'll end up then with a crackpot libertarian publishing house publishing all of this stuff, which may happen anyway.
Later.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my attempt to discuss this rationally. Well, but then we get into
It's funny you mentioned the libertarian aspect, right? Because if you go back to things like the Civil Rights Act and you look at segregation, say, running a segregated hotel, the argument at the time made by conservatives was, we don't like this, but, some conservatives loved it, but the ones who didn't like it said it should be up to the customers of the hotel to complain. They can post bad reviews, not post. They can make bad reviews. The name of this place will become mud, and then it won't be able to do that anymore. And it's pretty clear that they never expected that to actually work. Yeah. And what has happened in the online era is that exactly that has happened.
Yes. Yeah.
And those same people have turned around and compared it to Nazism.
That's fair. Yeah, I know, not as Nazism, but yeah, that is a fair point. Yes. Yes.
If we look back at the historical standard of cancellation, I was telling you about this before. It's just all over the place, the kind of things that people used to get in trouble for or not get in trouble for. And if we go back, a lot of this is anxiety around universities and campuses and what students are allowed to do. And I'm going to give you an example about how the past is a different country, about two people who went on to become famous. One of them is William Empson, the literary critic, right? When he was at university, I think it was at Cambridge, a butler found a condom in his rooms, right?
Okay.
And he was immediately expelled.
It was cancelled.
It was described as a prophylactic engine, and he was booted out of university and completely disgraced, right? Now, around the same time...
They wanted him to go raw. That's strange.
William Empson was expected to raw dog. Or not at all. Around the same time, Robert Oppenheimer, who goes on to become, the father of one of the fathers of atomic weaponry, repeatedly attempted to murder people when he was at university and was gently reprimanded and told not to do it again. He tried to kill his tutor by poisoning an apple, and he also tried to strangle one of his student friends while they were sleeping. He was, had severe psychiatric problems.
Yeah.
And apparently he was so physically puny that the person he tried to strangle just laughed.
Okay.
But the poison was real and
Yeah.
would have potentially been fatal had this guy eaten it.
And he got reprimanded.
And he just had a little chat. So condom, you get booted.
Yeah.
But attempted murder is fine.
So there were inconsistencies. Yes.
It's just, it's a topsy-turvy world.
It's
And
so
we're
weird.
at the other end of it now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Seuss example, and then we'll let's generalize it. Because I should point out there's a few very specific things about this, so they had this situation where you had the 6 books were taken from publication by the publishers, and Fox were the ones who took it the hardest. There were 139 mentions of Dr. Seuss on Fox on one day, Tuesday. 139 mentions of Dr. Seuss. Now, other things that happened on that day, by the way. It's not like this is the only thing that happened. Glenn Beck, I think he probably wins as far as the race to make the biggest goose of himself.
They are banning Dr. Seuss books. How much more do you need to see before all of America wakes up and goes, this is fascism? This is fascism. You don't destroy books. What is wrong with us, America? Go out and buy those books today. Find out if you can get them. Buy Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, because it's the end of an era. It is the end of freedom in America.
Okay, so this is now Fahrenheit 451. the destruction of books. And you mentioned the Potato Head as well, which is, I should just say, we mentioned it before, in case you don't know, that is even dumber than this, in that the case of Potato Head, it was once called Mr. Potato Head until a month ago, and Mrs. Potato Head. Mr. Potato and Mrs. Potato Head are still there. They've just universalized the brand name to be Potato Head. That's it. The brand name has become Potato Head. You can still buy Mr. Potato Head under the Potato Head brand and Mrs. Potato Head under the Potato Head brand. But apparently these people are so driven crazy by pronouns that the removal of the pronoun is also like Fahrenheit 451, apparently, the end of freedom.
Look, I think that what has happened here
Yes.
is that we've seen the end of kind of the Napoleonic era of culture war.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
like
I
the
don't.
grand, sweeping, dynamic, chivalrous era of culture war where really big stuff happens over
sure.
like Madonna and,
Yeah,
and,
okay, gotcha.
parental
Yeah.
advisory lyrics. That's over.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the Waterloo was gay marriage. Gay marriage passing is just huge. And after that, it's this kind of the sort of sexual morality stuff is basically over. You know, you can have a song like WAP be number 1 in the US. That would have just resulted in conservative pandemonium not that long ago, and they just kind of take it, right? So instead, we have kind of cultural World War One. It's trench warfare.
Yeah.
It's all fought over inches of dirt back and forth over things which are apparently futile and meaningless because you can't do the grand stuff anymore. The grand stuff is over.
But they're treating it like it's the grand stuff. Like Spencer Clavin from Daily Wire, and I'm citing this because I'm going to come back to Daily Wire, said, quote, "This is not a minor thing. It is everything."
Well, yeah. I mean, this is again, there is no trivia in culture war. But also something that has happened is that when we're talking about, I think this is actually in the US related to stuff like the Senate, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tell me
Where
this.
you have a democratic deficit for people who live in cities, especially young minorities, right? Their votes are essentially worthless. They earn significantly less than previous generational cohorts. They have no way to make their voices heard politically in a way that does anything. What do they have instead? Cultural power and economic power at consumption level. And that is what they are hammering. And the right recognizes quite reasonably, when you have McDonald's tweeting out Black Trans Lives Matter,
Yes.
something very dramatic has changed.
Yeah,
So that the legislative fight has to some extent shifted to the cultural side.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, I think that's, and that also, this is something that is simple enough for them to fight about as well. Because
Yes.
try and fight about inequality. Like, what the hell's going on there? What's the cause? What's the, like economics and politics is extremely complicated and very hard to understand. This is very easy to understand, very easy to fight.
And it's also the ability of media, the ability of anybody to end political careers, to, make legislative
That's
shifts.
true. Instant retribution as well.
Nobody's going to write a book, a novel that changes the world anymore. You know what I mean? Their best bet is to send a tweet that might get someone fired.
On that note, this is just off the top of my head. I wonder if the fact that the medium through which we communicate is changing the things we communicate about.
Oh, of course it is.
Like, I wonder if
Yeah.
this is the kind of thing you can tweet about.
Yeah.
You can't tweet about broad social movements.
100%.
You can tweet about this.
It has to be mimetically reproducible, right? Like Cuomo killing all these people essentially in New York. I mean,
We'll get to
this
him
is-
as well.
Yeah. It really says something about the political and cultural moment that it required some not third degree allegations of harassment and sexual harassment.
And in particular, a photo.
Yes.
Yeah.
For a policy which killed thousands of people to attract a political penalty.
Yeah.
It had to happen in reverse. He had to be cancelled before he could be held accountable.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great observation. I should say, by the way, this is not a stats nugget, but
Thank goodness for that.
just out of curiosity, can you guess how many copies of The Cat's Quizzer was sold this year before it was banned?
My guess is that almost all of them would have been institutional purchases. They would have been bought by libraries and things like that, or by Seuss completionists.
I'm sure there's lots of them.
It
Glenn
would be
Beck's one of them.
It would be in the triple figures, maybe 250.
Okay, that is a great guess because I saw the sales of all 6 of the books, and the highest one's in Mulberry Street. That's 636. Most of them are in the 200 range.
Right.
But The Cat's Quizzer has sold 2. 2. It was kind of cancelled before it was cancelled, I feel. It feels cancelled by the market.
Well, whoever those two people are have got a real collector's item on their
They
hands.
certainly do.
They should get it up on eBay now and sell it to the Fox News
Well,
audience.
that's the thing, actually. There's the one thing I will give. There's the one thing I will give to people, and I haven't even started on being some people be asked. But the one thing I'll give those people is that eBay is weird. Did you see eBay's removing the books?
I did see that.
But now that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's absolute bullshit. Like, it's one thing to say, okay, the publisher isn't selling anymore, but to say that eBay is saying you can't even sell it secondhand because it's so immoral, that is bullshit.
Another aspect here in terms of this reduced power that we're talking about, right? I mean, employees of these massive tech companies have a poor chance of unionizing themselves. They have a poor chance at getting job security in the traditional way. What they can do is kind of steer the ship to do stuff like that and give them a sensation of control.
Anyway, but I just want to say that I've got a theory on all this because this actually links to something else as well, which is that, like, because John talked about this on the show, he showed the pictures and he said, well, yeah, they look pretty dodge.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But I think you missed the point, which is that the entire outrage, in my view, is clearly in bad faith. And I'll tell you why I say that. It's because none of the people being outraged have referred to the actual books. No one's holding up the book. No one's reading the book. No one's pointing to the book. No one's showing the pictures. If they actually thought it was outrageous, what was done, we've seen those pictures constantly. The fact we don't see those pictures tells me it ain't about the pictures. Right? So the outrage is in bad faith. Kevin McCarthy just tweeted out him reading Green Eggs and Ham.
I saw that.
This is not about green eggs and ham. Stop trying to conflate Green Eggs and Ham and The Cat in the Hat and Dr. Seuss in general with The Cat's Quizzer, which sold 2 copies. Like the attempt to conflate them suggests to me, once again, bad faith again. And I don't know if you know where this came from, this whole story. But actually, I happened to see firsthand, because one of the blogs which I read a lot of blogs, as you know,
Yes.
is the Daily Wire.
Uh-huh.
And I happened to just notice, like a week ago, they ran a story about this old study, like 2 or 3 years old, about Dr. Seuss, saying that didn't have enough people of color, because it didn't have enough people. But anyway, it didn't have enough people of color, and it even cited that some of them were offensively drawn, but that wasn't the main point. The main point was not enough people of color.
Uh-huh.
That was what the study said, right? And they held that up and they said, look at this. Oh, they're trying to ban Dr. Seuss. They're trying to cancel Dr. Seuss. And then at the time I thought, wow, this is really weak tea. And I was going to do a piece about it on the show. So I was looking at Twitter saying, is anyone buying this? And there were just none. There were just no left-wingers playing this game at all. It was just people being outraged on the right, someone trying to ban Dr. Seuss. No one was trying to ban Dr. Seuss. Just people outraged at the idea of someone trying to ban Dr. Seuss. And then this press release came out after that. Daily Wire went crazy because I was like, yeah, here we go. And they ran like 4 articles about it. Fox News has got a direct line from the Daily Wire. They love them, especially Tucker Carlson. So Fox News picked it up off that, and then it went crazy.
They manifested it.
Yes,
it's like The Secret.
Yes, they did.
They used the attractional force of the energy to generate a cultural war from thin air.
And it reminded me of this story with Gina Carano from like 2 weeks ago, which was this person on The Mandalorian,
Yep.
an actor who did this stupid Instagram post, which was Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited. Most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? Okay, I can think of a lot of ways that that's different. But let's leave aside whether that's an intelligent thing to write or not. I was like in a meme, right? She then got sacked, essentially because she's conservative. And
Yes.
she's tweeting out conservative memes that are dumb, right? Apparently she'd tweeted out a few conservative things before as well, so they had her in the gun anyway. I wouldn't be sacking people for that.
No.
Like, I find that kind of thing ridiculous. But the fact is that she became a bit of a cause célèbre amongst conservatives, going, they're cancelling conservatives. The Daily Wire, oh my God, they hired her to make a movie.
Yeah, with Ben Shapiro, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ben
Yeah.
Shapiro is not an actor. I'm looking forward to that movie because they have never made any kind of film before other than having Ben Shapiro sitting at a desk being smarter than everyone else. That is the entire Daily Wire oeuvre, right? But apparently they're making a movie with Gina Carano. They ran so many articles about this. They ran articles about her trending on IMDb.
Yep.
About her how her the Google mentions were more than The Mandalorian during the controversy. There's just so many really specious kind of articles, which is about nothing. They were just trying to basically promote this person who's going to make this movie for them. And then interviews and just went on and on. And I suddenly realized halfway through this, just going after the 20th article, okay, Daily Wire is monetizing this.
Of course.
This has got nothing to do with outrage about Gina Carano. This is an opportunity to market themselves. And then they did the same thing with Dr. Seuss. This is just completely marketing. Like, there's just no good faith about these outrages at all. So go on.
I think that it's complementary, that the idea is, it's almost, it is a bizarre world where you sort of have every day you wake up and something different, it's like you're looking, especially if you're in a different time zone, you're kind of looking one eye blurry at the phone, looking at the social media, and there's a conservative account you follow, and there's a guy who's destroying his own coffee machine with a hammer.
Yeah.
And you're like, why did this happen today? And then someone else is saying, we're boycotting beans. We're boycotting Goya beans. We're not buying any Goya beans.
Yes.
So it is this kind of shibboleth, like taboo culture where if we renounce something, we take it up, you know, and vice versa. Have you ever been to Bologna in Italy?
No.
So in the square in Bologna, there are these towers. There's quite a few of them, and they have arrow slits in them. And there's still a controversy about what they were used for. But one of the theories is that in the very factional politics of like Renaissance Italy, people from different factions would go into different towers and they'd just kind of like shoot arrows at each other and pour boiling oil on each other. And then they'd go home. And it was just like, it's just a job. It was like commuting. You know, you just go and take pot shots at the people in the other towers. And this is how you work out the kind of, you know, daily factional friction.
So that's dispute resolution, or is that just sport?
It's not
just
resolution.
venting. It's just
yeah,
venting.
it's just that the factionalism happens in such a way that it's just the focus of the public square.
And it's people in particular factions go to particular...
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't go to, you know, you've got your tower, they've got theirs.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of apocryphal. That's one version. But this is kind of where we're at,
Is
right?
that your diagnosis of what needs to happen?
It'd be fun. I wouldn't mind to go in one of the towers.
Sure.